All right. Hi, my name is Rebecca Hacker, and this is my story. When I am asked, what is the time of your life when you felt God's presence or experienced his, fullness the most? I think of this one time in particular. I was in college and I was experiencing a time in my life, one of the darkest times of my life, where I felt very far from God. I was going through just a very depressing time of life when I didn't really want to do anything, didn't want to get out of bed. It was just a very dark time. I had to drive for several hours and I just wanted to forget about what was going on, wanted to listen to some fun music and just kind of like drive and not think about my life. And this is like before you could just like play like Spotify in a car. So I was like, either the radio or a CD was what was gonna happen, and I didn't have a CD. So I turned on the radio and flipping through the channels, and every single channel is static, just static. It's like, okay, and click seek again, static. Every single station is static except for one, and it was a man preaching. And I was like, I do not want to hear a preacher right now. I want to listen to, some like fun, forget about my life music. But I leave it on the preacher. He starts talking about the different soils, the parable of the soil and the farmer and blah, blah, blah. And then almost out of nowhere, he cuts to Ezekiel 37. So Ezekiel 37 is the story of the Valley of Dry Bones. And Ezekiel is standing before a valley full of dry bones. It's an army that has been killed and they are like skeletons, right? God comes to him and says, can I make these bones live? And Ezekiel's like, only you know, God, right? Like it feels like a trick question. It's like, well, they're dead. Extremely dead, could not be more dead because it's all it is bones. It says that God sends breath, right? It says the breath of God comes into the dry bones. It says it comes from the four winds, and it says sinews covered the bones and muscle covered the bones and then flesh covered them, and then they rose up, and an army rose up in this valley where there used to be dry bones because God sent breath. And then he says, do you feel like a valley of dry bones? And I'm like, yes, that is the perfect description of how I feel right now. I could not be more dead spiritually. I could not be further from God is how it feels. I had been so focused on trying to somehow connect the dry bones of my life, connect these, try to erect something out of a skeleton to serve somehow. And what God said to me was, who brings the breath? Ezekiel's job was to wait on the breath of God. That's the only way that this valley full of dead, dry bones could live. What God said to me in that moment was, wait on me, I bring the breath. At that point, I'm like crying, like, oh my gosh, this, I just wanted to have this, this trip where I didn't have to think about how hard life was right then and what God brought to me through really crazy, the craziest like direct message from God that I've ever received, right? This crazy, like everything is static except for this preacher who's saying, hey, wait for the breath of God. And that's what I did. I just went and I said, all right, Lord, I am a valley of dead, dry bones, and I feel like you're nowhere. But I know you can make me live. And I want you to come and bring breath into my life. And it took a long time, but that's what he did. And I am beyond grateful for the static on the radio that day as some random preacher helped me remember that it is God who brings the breath.